Earthquakes are among the most devastating natural forces on our planet, capable of toppling entire cities, triggering massive landslides, and unleashing deadly tsunamis. Some quakes are so powerful they rip open the land itself, leaving behind deep fissures and scar-like ruptures across the surface of the Earth. But what exactly causes these fractures? And which fault lines pose the greatest danger? Before we explore the planet's most powerful fault zones, it's important to understand what a fault line really is. In simple terms, a fault line is a long crack or fracture in the Earth's crust, where huge slabs of rock, known as tectonic plates, move against each other. These plates are constantly shifting, colliding, and grinding together, creating immense pressure deep beneath the surface. When that pressure is suddenly released, the ground shakes violently, producing what we know as an earthquake. There are three main types of plate boundaries. Convergent boundaries, where plates move toward each other and collide. Divergent boundaries, where plates pull apart. Transform boundaries, where plates slide past each other horizontally. Each of these can unleash destruction on a different scale. And while most earthquakes go unnoticed, some have changed the course of history. Let's start with one of the most famous and most feared fault lines on Earth, the San Andreas Fault. If you've ever watched the Hollywood blockbuster San Andreas starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you might already know the name. In the film, a massive quake tears through California, splitting highways, swallowing buildings, and shaking the entire US West Coast. While the movie's destruction is pure fiction, the San Andreas Fault itself is very real, and it's one of the most studied fault zones in the world. Stretching roughly 800 miles, 1,300 kilometers, from the northern Gulf of California through Western California, it marks the transform boundary between two massive tectonic plates, the Pacific Plate, moving northwest, and the North American Plate, pushing southeast. This boundary forms what's known as a right lateral strike-slip fault, where the plates slide past each other horizontally. The movement isn't smooth, it's full of friction and tension. Over time, that pressure builds up until it suddenly releases, resulting in an earthquake. The San Andreas Fault has been responsible for some of the most infamous quakes in US history, including the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, which destroyed over 80% of the city and caused thousands of deaths. However, contrary to popular belief and Hollywood exaggeration, earthquakes don't typically cause the ground to split wide open into gaping chasms. Those scenes where the earth swallows people whole? Total movie magic. In reality, most surface cracks caused by earthquakes are only a few feet wide, if that. That's because quakes result from friction and sliding, not the land pulling apart. Most visible fissures seen after an earthquake are actually caused by landslides or the shaking of loose ground, not by the fault itself. Still, the San Andreas Fault remains a ticking geological time bomb. Scientists know it's only a matter of time before another major rupture occurs, potentially one of the most powerful in US history. The Altyn Tagh Fault. Ever been so tired you feel like you could sleep for an entire year? Yeah, that's me almost every day. Well, this next fault line seems to share that same energy because it's been snoozing for centuries, and no one knows when it might finally wake up. Meet the Altyn Tagh Fault, a massive left lateral strike-slip fault stretching up to 1,000 miles, over 1,600 kilometers, along the edge of the Tibetan Plateau and the Kunlun Mountains in China. Despite its enormous size, this fault has been eerily quiet. It's only believed to have caused 2 or 3 major earthquakes in the past 2,000 to 3,000 years. That's right. It's been lying suspiciously dormant all this time. So, does that mean we're overdue for a big one? Or is the Altyn Tagh simply not a threat anymore? Well, scientists measure fault activity using something called a slip rate. Basically, how fast two sides of rock are sliding past each other. The Altyn Tagh Fault slip rate is around 10 millimeters per year, and there's evidence that this rate has actually slowed down over time. Some researchers think that increased movement along the Kunlun Fault, which runs nearby, has taken some of the stress away, kind of like one fault doing the work for another. That slower slip means less motion and less seismic activity, for now. But with a fault this large, even a long nap can end with a rude awakening. Let's just hope it stays asleep, permanently. The Queen Charlotte Fault. Just like my pet Rottweiler Prince Fluffy, the Queen Charlotte Fault may have a sweet name, but there's absolutely nothing gentle about it. This right lateral strike-slip fault stretches over 750 miles, 1,200 kilometers, running from Vancouver Island in Canada all the way up to southeast Alaska. Much like California's San Andreas Fault, the Queen Charlotte marks the boundary between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. But here's where things get wild. The Pacific Plate moves northwest at blistering speeds of 3 to 4 inches per year, while the North American Plate drifts at barely half an inch. This difference in velocity means the Pacific side is constantly grinding and slipping, creating tremendous tension. That's why fault lines surrounding the Pacific are part of a deadly region called the Ring of Fire, responsible for over 80% of the world's largest earthquakes. The Queen Charlotte Fault has more than earned its spot in this danger zone. Over the last century, it has produced 5 major earthquakes, all above magnitude 7 on the Richter scale. Its most terrifying moment came in 1958, when a 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck near Lituya Bay, Alaska, unleashing the largest tsunami ever recorded. The quake triggered a colossal 3,000-foot landslide, sending 90 million tons of rock plunging into the bay and creating a wave that shot up a staggering 1,700 feet high, taller than the Empire State Building. The tsunami obliterated everything in its path. Amazingly, only 5 people lost their lives, though countless homes were destroyed. Still, that's one hell of a way to make a splash. When an earthquake hits, there's no stopping it. All you can do is hope the ground decides to show mercy. Unfortunately, not all faults are as quiet as they seem. The Kermadec Tonga Trench. Now, try saying Kermadec Tonga Trench 10 times fast. I dare you. It's a mouthful, I know. But this geological beast is as powerful as its name is long. This fault system forms a massive 1,900-mile, 3,000 kilometers, subduction zone stretching between Samoa and New Zealand. And unlike the horizontal strike-slip faults we've seen so far, this one moves vertically, making it a dip-slip or thrust fault. Here, the Pacific Plate, the fastest-moving tectonic plate on Earth, is being shoved beneath the Indo-Australian Plate at high speed. This collision zone forms what's known as a megathrust fault, the kind responsible for the most catastrophic earthquakes and tsunamis in history. Since 1940, the Kermadec Tonga region has generated numerous magnitude 7.5 and above earthquakes. In 2009, it produced a particularly bizarre event, a double earthquake in Samoa. First, a normal fault quake struck, causing the upper block of rock to slide downward. Just minutes later, a thrust fault quake followed, both combining to create a staggering magnitude 8 event. The result? Tsunami waves towering over 70 feet high. And that's not all. In 2022, an underwater volcano near Tonga erupted with such force that tsunami waves reached as far as California's coastline, more than 5,000 miles away. If the Earth ever had an anger management issue, this would be it. The main Himalayan thrust. The Himalayas are home to the world's tallest peaks, but what most people don't realize is that these mountains are literally being pushed higher every single year. Beneath their snowy summits lies the main Himalayan thrust, a colossal 1,500-mile-long megathrust fault marking the boundary between the Indian Plate and the Eurasian Plate. The Indian Plate moves about 2 inches per year, while the Eurasian Plate creeps along at only half an inch. That constant collision forces the land upward, making the Himalayas rise by roughly 10 millimeters annually, and triggering powerful earthquakes in the process. This fault has a deadly history. It's the culprit behind the 2015 Nepal earthquakes, which measured 7.3 and 8.1 in magnitude. The second quake was so violent it caused a massive avalanche on Mount Everest, devastating nearby villages and claiming thousands of lives. The main Himalayan thrust is literally reshaping Asia, creating mountains while tearing the ground apart below. It's a reminder that nature's most breathtaking wonders often come from unimaginable destruction. The Enriquillo-Plantain Garden Fault. The name Enriquillo-Plantain Garden might sound like a lovely botanical park. The perfect place for a stroll, right? Yeah, no. Despite the peaceful name, this is one of the most dangerous fault lines in the Western Hemisphere. The Enriquillo-Plantain Garden Fault Zone is a left lateral strike-slip fault stretching about 683 miles, 1,010 kilometers, from the Cayman Trough, one of the deepest parts of the Caribbean Sea, all the way to the Enriquillo Valley in the Dominican Republic. This seemingly quiet fault was behind one of the most devastating earthquakes in modern history, the 2010 Haiti earthquake. On January 12, 2010, the Caribbean plate and the North American plate slid past each other, releasing massive amounts of energy. The result was a magnitude 7.0 earthquake that struck near Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, leveling entire neighborhoods in seconds. The human toll was staggering, an estimated 200,000 to 300,000 lives lost and billions of dollars in destruction. Entire communities were reduced to rubble, hospitals collapsed, and infrastructure across the country was crippled. It remains one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. And Haiti's suffering didn't end there. In August 2021, another magnitude 7.0 earthquake struck the region again, damaging or destroying more than 137,000 homes. Residents endured over 900 aftershocks, some of which continued for years, grim reminders of the planet's restlessness beneath their feet. Aftershocks are smaller quakes that follow a major seismic event caused by the crust adjusting to the new stress and movement. They can occur days, months, or even years after the main earthquake. So yeah, the plantain garden might sound inviting, but it's the kind of garden that can shake your world in the worst possible way. The Anatolian fault zone, Turkey and Syria. We all know twins can be double the trouble, and fault zones are no different. It's bad enough dealing with one fault line, but imagine having two tangled together beneath your feet. The Anatolian fault isn't just a single scar across the Earth. It's actually made up of two massive fault systems, the North Anatolian Fault and the East Anatolian Fault. The northern one stretches about 900 miles from eastern Turkey all the way to the Aegean Sea, while the eastern one sits on the transform boundary between the Arabian and Anatolian plates. The northern fault, on the other hand, grinds along the edge of the Eurasian plate. Yep, twice the plates, twice the problems. These two intersecting fault lines have unleashed disaster multiple times, especially in recent years. In 2022, the North Anatolian Fault triggered a 6.1 magnitude earthquake in Turkey. Then, just a year later, the East Anatolian Fault struck with a devastating 7.8 magnitude quake that shook both Turkey and Syria. According to the United Nations, that single event affected more than 15 million people, making it one of the deadliest earthquakes of the century. With such an active fault zone, there's no telling when the next rupture might happen, a chilling reminder that the Earth beneath us is never truly still. The Sunda megathrust. It's hard to wrap your head around how massive and destructive earthquakes can be. They don't just reshape landscapes, they rewrite entire coastlines and ripple through millions of lives. That's exactly what the Sunda megathrust is capable of. Stretching an unbelievable 3,300 miles, this colossal fault marks the collision between the Indo-Australian plate and the Eurasian plate, running from Myanmar down toward northwestern Australia. It's long, it's powerful, and it's terrifyingly unpredictable. In 2004, this fault suddenly slipped, a reverse fault movement where the Indian plate was forced beneath the smaller Burma plate. The rupture extended nearly 900 miles, making it the longest fault rupture ever recorded, longer than the entire state of California. The result? The catastrophic Boxing Day tsunami. Waves as high as 100 feet tore across the Indian Ocean, moving at 500 miles per hour, fast enough to cross entire oceans in a single day. The devastation reached as far as South Africa, nearly 5,000 miles away. With a magnitude of 9.1, the quake unleashed energy equivalent to 23,000 Hiroshima bombs. It affected 18 countries, including Indonesia, Thailand, and Sri Lanka, and left behind a trail of unimaginable loss. Even the aftermath offered no mercy. 14 aftershocks followed, some powerful enough to count as major quakes themselves, reaching magnitudes between 5.7 and 7.3. When a fault like the Sunda megathrust wakes up, the entire world feels it. The Hayward Fault. Despite being a fraction of the size of the San Andreas, the Hayward Fault is considered by the U.S. Geological Survey to be the most dangerous fault in America. Stretching 74 miles through the densely populated San Francisco Bay Area, it even runs directly beneath the University of California, Berkeley's Memorial Stadium. Its last major event in 1868 was one of the most destructive in California's history, and the fault has been building up stress ever since. Scientists model it as a tectonic time bomb, with sobering statistical probabilities: a 72% chance of a magnitude 6.7 or greater earthquake before 2043, a 63% chance of such an event occurring before 2036. In response, cities and institutions have undertaken significant preparation. Berkeley, for instance, has retrofitted its stadium with a massive concrete foundation and base isolators designed to allow the structure to shift safely during a quake. In the world of seismic risk, preparedness is the only defense. The Japan Trench. Japan's famous mountains and volcanoes are a direct result of its precarious location atop 4 tectonic plates. This geological convergence makes it one of the most seismically active places on Earth, experiencing around 1,500 quakes annually. The Japan Trench, a 500-mile-long, 27,000-foot-deep subduction zone, is where the Pacific Plate dives beneath the North American Plate. It was here, in 2011, that a colossal megathrust earthquake ruptured, with a magnitude between 8.9 and 9.1. The event was so powerful, it slightly altered the Earth's rotation, shortening the day by 1.8 microseconds. The resulting tsunami sent 130-foot waves crashing into the Tohoku region, devastating infrastructure and triggering the meltdown of 3 nuclear reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi power plant. This disaster stands as a stark example of a compound catastrophe, where an earthquake triggers a chain reaction of technological and humanitarian crises. The Aleutian megathrust. For Alaskans, minor tremors are a fact of life. The state sits atop the Aleutian megathrust, a 1,800-mile subduction zone arc where the Pacific Plate converges head-on with the North American Plate. This direct collisional boundary generates over 40,000 earthquakes per year. While most are minor, the region frequently experiences large quakes, with at least one major event annually. The sheer power of this zone was unleashed on Good Friday in 1964. The Great Alaska Earthquake, a staggering magnitude 9.2, ruptured over 400 miles of land, a distance comparable from New York to Toronto. It triggered massive landslides and a tsunami that raced across the Pacific, causing damage as far away as Hawaii. This event remains the second largest earthquake ever recorded. The Alpine Fault. Beneath the stunning scenery of New Zealand's South Island lies the Alpine Fault. This massive boundary, where the Pacific Plate grinds against the Australian Plate, is remarkably regular in its cycle of major quakes. Unlike many faults, scientists have a relatively clear picture of its behavior. Research suggests there is an 82% probability of a magnitude 8.0 or greater earthquake occurring along the Alpine Fault within the next 50 years. To understand the potential energy release, consider the 2011 Christchurch earthquake, a magnitude 6.3 that caused widespread damage. A Great Alpine Fault earthquake could release up to 1,000 times more energy. Walker Lane. Tectonic landscapes evolve over millions of years. The Walker Lane is a 625-mile wide zone of cracks and faults running from California into Nevada. It's not a single fault, but a complex fissure system that includes the Garlock and even interacts with the San Andreas. Geologists see the Walker Lane as a nascent or baby plate boundary. While the San Andreas is the current primary boundary, about 30 million years old, the younger Walker Lane, about 10 million years old, is steadily moving northward. Projections suggest that over the next 7 to 8 million years, it may eventually usurp the San Andreas as the main boundary between the Pacific and North American plates. This gradual shift could, in a distant geological future, push California offshore and transform Nevada into the new coastline of the West. The Cascadia subduction zone. Perhaps no other fault in North America generates as much concern among seismologists as the Cascadia subduction zone. Stretching 700 miles from northern California to Vancouver Island, this is where the Juan de Fuca, Gorda, and Explorer plates are being subducted beneath the North American plate. Once thought to be relatively benign, we now know Cascadia is capable of generating earthquakes on par with the 2004 Indian Ocean quake, with magnitudes of 8.0 to 9.0 plus. The last full-scale rupture, in 1700, generated a massive tsunami that reached the coast of Japan. With a 300-year buildup of stress, the fault is like a tightly wound spring. When it next ruptures, models predict tsunami waves could reach 40 feet, with casualties potentially exceeding 30,000 people. The Pacific Northwest is now in a race against time to prepare for this inevitable event. The East African Rift. Not all tectonic boundaries involve collisions. The East African Rift Valley is a 2,000-mile-long scar where the Somalian plate is slowly pulling away from the Nubian plate, a process called continental rifting. As the plates diverge, magma rises, creating new crust and causing the valley floor to sink. This process was vividly illustrated in 2018 in Kenya when heavy rains washed away loose soil, exposing a giant fissure that had been forming underground. This event highlighted a shocking geological truth. The African continent is slowly, inexorably, splitting in two. Don't plan for a new ocean anytime soon, though. The rift is widening at about the speed your fingernails grow, a process that will take tens of millions of years to complete. The Peru-Chile Trench. If fault lines earned awards, the Peru-Chile Trench would take the top prize. This undersea chasm is the longest trench in the world, 3,700 miles, and one of the deepest, over 26,000 feet. It marks the subduction zone where the Nazca Plate plunges beneath the South American plate. This colossal fault was the source of the most powerful earthquake ever recorded, the 1960 Valdivia earthquake in Chile. With a magnitude of 9.5, it generated 80-foot tsunami waves that raced across the Pacific, causing significant damage in Hawaii, Japan, and the Philippines. Its power was such that it produced 5 aftershocks of magnitude 7.0 or greater. This trench is a permanent reminder of the raw, planet-shaping power of subduction zones. And there you have it, some of the deadliest, most destructive, and most fascinating faults on Earth. From towering mountains to ocean trenches, these fractures remind us that the planet beneath our feet is alive and ever-changing. Have you ever experienced an earthquake firsthand or seen a fault line up close? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.